Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to Power Rank. Welcome to the ESPN Esports VALORANT Power Ranking Show. I am your host, as always, Tyler Fion on Fire Erzberger. Today I'm here with my pal, casting connoisseur, one of the fastest rising stars in all of VALORANT commentating, Simo. How are you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good, and I think there's been a couple of announcements, a couple of leaks that make it even better. So I'm excited to dive in and get our power ranking on.
Guten Tag indeed, my friend Simo. As minutes before we came online, before we were about to rank and get into the rankings right off the bat, talk about the PAX Arena Invitational, which was an amazing tournament. We have a few weeks. The newest agent, the 12th agent in Valorant, the Wunderkind from Germany herself, Killjoy, as I think maybe some people are seeing the irony in her name, as our new turret-based tech genius agent. Her abilities have been leaked. We have all four. We don't necessarily know the ramifications of all of them. We need to see, obviously the damage on some of her abilities. But we know what they look like. We know her kit. We know what she's coming at. What's your first impression of Killjoy, Simo?
As minutes pass, agents that fall out of the meta and new agents that kind of fall into the meta. So as much as I'd love to see a stim boost up a turret, I actually think her Nano Storm or her Molly is going to push Brimstone out of the meta completely. Omen, really solidify Omen as that smoking agent that you might have for your team. But I just think there's a lot of cool different ways to gather intel. I know that everyone might be just like snoozing because there's an auto turret, but I think it adds a new way to gather information over a bigger area, and that might actually push Cypher a little bit out of the meta, which is what I think they were hoping for with this agent.
Yeah, as we will talk about with the PAX Arena and previous tournaments, Cypher has been that number one S tier pick. Picked in about 92% of the games, I believe, from this past weekend's PAX Arena tournament. Killjoy is an intel agent. I think a lot of people are going to look at her and say, this turret's overbroken, turret champions, certain agents, certain characters never work. Look at Overwatch. Look at League of Legends of Heimerdinger. Heimerdinger is the most annoying champion in history to play against alongside Timo. Why bring a turret character into this? It's awful. It's annoying. You're killing the game, right? We need more maps while you're adding in more agents. I don't know, though. I do agree with you where it's like the meta's about to get shaken up entirely, right? When there's only 11 agents, now soon to be 12, one agent coming in, it shakes up everything. Now all these teams have been perfecting these agent combos, and we're seeing such good combinations of Omen flashes into recon bowls, into teams playing so well around these utilities, and now you're throwing a new character in the mix that's going to shake everything up. And like you said, Brimstone might be in trouble.
Yeah. Not to mention, I think there might be actually a map that is released with the next act. So I think I cannot confirm or deny. I don't actually know. But I think didn't they say that they are going to release something new with every new act or whatever, and what that means, a new map and a new agent? But I don't know.
I believe there will be 2 maps every year. So in every episode, and there's a lot of verbiage here, but let me break it down to you. Every episode will have 3 acts. In every act, there's a new agent. Every new episode, there will be a new map, a new location unveiled. So we will not be looking at a 5th map until December, Simo, which is very disappointing. Which hurts a lot.
I was waiting for. I've seen even PAX. I even experimented with this a little bit at the Esports Doug Charity Clash, a ban type system, but with 4 maps, it's so awkward. And you can even see PAX had a best of 5 format set up. It's not comfortable until you have that 5th map. And so it sucks that we're not going to see it for a while, but I mean, hopefully they can tease us with something soon.
Let's talk about PAX Arena a little bit. Let's move from the future of Killjoy onto the past weekend's games, which you casted a few of them. You casted T1 versus Envy, I believe. You casted a few of the group stage matches after PAX listened to the fans and made the group stage matches community-friendly, where we had clean feeds from the observers where casters were able to cast upon them on the Thursday game action. So coming at the PAX, Sentinels obviously the biggest story, winning the event, beating C9 in the final. But what's your biggest outside? We're going to talk a lot about Sentinels this show.
Yes.
I'm sure they're both in our top 5. But for you, what was the biggest story coming out of PAX that was not Sentinels?
I'm just gonna steal your thunder and say Homeless. I think Homeless was probably the biggest story. A team that was put together within weeks of the tournament. Not really a whole lot of practice together. I mean, we have seen some of these members around before. Even you and I have had the ability to have a sneak peek at Som at the ESPN Esports VALORANT Invitational. And since then, he's been kind of floating around, playing with different members and trying things out. And if I recall correctly, he is IGL, and so he needs to find a team that meshes well with him. And it's good to finally see that he has a team that is able to do that. Superman, I've seen closely. I've casted a lot of Echo 8's games, but it doesn't feel like he really came online until this tournament. Like, I've seen a lot of him. It usually, I feel like, was Aaron in certain cases for Echo 8 doing a lot of top fragging, but has since kind of fallen back a little bit with the new members to the roster. But Superman, Som, I think the whole team, Lasky, Def, Poise, like they all work so well together, and we saw that against T1. Has to be the story of the tournament for me.
I have to agree. I mean, Homeless was when they were first announced as China Win, which if people don't know, that was the second best amateur team. That was, it was Som's team that was right neck and neck with Together We Are Terrific in the amateur scene before Som went to FaZe to try out for that team during the last Ignition Series event. Yeah. Obviously, FaZe is going a different way. Today they announced Marv as their third official member. Marv, Zachary, and Corey rounding that core lineup. 2 more players to be announced very soon. We've already talked about this at length on the ESPN Valorant show on Thursday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. But those 2 spots should be filled from what we know as Baby Bay and Raucus, 2 former and current Overwatch League stars. So we might see a full team Overwatch coming from FaZe. And I'm very excited to see FaZe play in the next tournament. Whenever that is announced. We are expecting a Ignition Series event very soon in North America, and I think FaZe will be playing in that. So I'm excited to see how they do.
Yeah, to be quite honest, I'm very excited to see, to echo what you said, a team full of Overwatch players. You can meme and chat all you want, but, I mean, I'm sure we'll get into it, but Sinatra is a beast, and if there's more Sinatras lurking in the Overwatch League that want to make the jump over, I'm excited to see them.
I mean, I've talked to a few pros who were playing this weekend's tournament, and I was asking about FaZe, trying to get some, little crumbs of knowledge of who's going where, how do they look, and I had a few people tell me that right now, in Valorant, the best player right now is Corey. And I had a few people tell me that the best player in Valorant, it's not Tens, it's not Wardell, it's not Brax, it's Corey. And if you look at some of his clips, you look at how he has robot aim. He might have the best aim of anyone I've seen in Valorant so far. So I'm very excited to see Corey with a team around him that he's kind of built out, where I do think Corey is that centerpiece player. So very, very excited to see FaZe in the upcoming Ignition Series tournament, wherever that might be. But let's get into the power rankings, Simo. This is the Valorant Power Ranking Show. Me and you both filled out our top 10s. I just hope we have differences. Last week, me and Ryan Central from HitScan, we were very similar in our European rankings. Very, very equal. There was one change between our top 10 lists. I don't think me and you have similar lists this week.
No. I mean, we'll get into this, but my 5 to 10, or my 6 to 10 rather, was so difficult. I am still, even right now, beating myself up about it, but we'll get to that point. We're obviously going to start with our 5th pick first.
Yeah. I will start with my number 5. I don't know your list. You do not know mine. Let's see if we get even close on our 5th pick. Now, for me, number 5. Again, for my power rankings, I am looking at I'm not just looking at recent tournaments, not just this past weekend's tournament. I'm looking at the first Ignition Series tournament. I'm looking at other tournaments that happened during the beta with more relevancy brought towards these more recent tournaments. But for my number 5, I know they had a very dire knockout in the playoffs, but I have T1 as my number 5 team coming in for this week. In the group stages, I was so impressed by them. They dominated their group stage. Obviously, they had probably the weakest group of every team because FaZe was supposed to be in their group, but they got replaced by Way Too French very late in the process. But they were battering everyone, and I was so impressed by how they were playing off the stage, where Skadoodle finally got off the stage. He had more proactivity on that Sova, and he looked so good opping on the Sova, and Food destroyed everyone in the group stage. Food, the first Radiant, all the hype around him of how, he could be up there. Like him, Wardell, Tens, like Food needs to get brought up there alongside the best players in North America, and he was wrecking people. He had double the amount of kills that he had deaths in the group stage. He was putting up 20, 30 bombs every single group stage game. Then we get to the playoffs versus Homeless, and they looked lost. They just didn't know how to play against Psalm's tactics, where they just looked really, really lost, and everything they'd worked up in the group stage just kind of fell apart. What do you think about T1 this past week?
I mean, you'll see that reflect in some of my own personal rankings, but I'd have to agree in the sense that I think Homeless really just took them apart bit by bit. When you lose in that kind of fashion, you really have to make yourself wonder, like, what does the review look like for T1? What do the scrims look like for T1? And could they have prevented being knocked out so early in the PAX Invitational, right? Those are the big question marks for me. But we'll get to where I place them. My personal number 5.
All right, let's get your number 5.
My personal number 5, I have Team Envy. I compared it to some of your earlier power rankings. This really hasn't moved. You put Team Envy at number 5 way back when in July, which isn't really that long ago. But really, for me, Mame has been the shining light for this team, in my opinion. He had the second highest first bloods per round in PAX at 0.19. And for me, that tells me that they're utilizing his ability to snipe and play off of frag information very, very well. And when you have a player like Finesse, who's on the Cypher, who's constantly looking for lurks, well, you're going to be punished because Mame's finding these opening picks, and then you're giving space for FNS with the man advantage to find these, openings in, whatever map it is, wherever he decides to go. If it's Haven, he's pushing A while the opposing is pushing C or whatever, right? Like, he's trying to find these openings. And you have a player like Mame who's opening things up on the Sova, on the Jet with these open picks. But to me, the reason why there are 5 is because Finesse, the lurk feels like a 50-50 gamble. Sometimes it's a game-winning play, and sometimes he gets scouted by the enemy team, and they read the lurk. And we saw that with Cloud9 against Homeless. They read the lurk. They read Psalm's strategies. So, that's kind of where I stand with Envy. What do you think?
I like Envy a lot. They're actually not in my top 5. We'll get to where they are in my top 10. But they're also no shame to Envy. I like Envy a lot. But for me, everyone in my top 5 has gone to a final. They've won something major. Okay. I'm still waiting for Envy to get that, that first chip on, like, very similar to Sentinels, right? Where for a while it's like, Sentinels, most exciting team in NA, most fun to watch. They are so aggressive, so exciting. They do so many crazy things and so many unorthodox things, but I need them to win a chip first, and then I'll put them up higher. They finally won this weekend. Where for Envy, they're very good, and they played TSM quite well in the quarterfinals. Where I do agree, Mame is also my kind of player to watch on that team. Where he was beating Wardell in some of those op duels. Yes. Like, there was times where they were both peaking at the same time, and Mame was getting the better of Wardell, who was the god of op in NA, as some people would say. We'll get to TSM in a little bit and how their tournament kind of went down the drain, but. I like Envy, not in my top 5, but I still think they are a team that will be perennially in playoffs.
Yes.
I think they're a team that's solid enough where they're not going to have the Cloud9 or Sentinels fallback, where I can see, even with Sentinels now who are so good, I can see their aggressive play sometimes getting the better of them, where I think Envy is a very consistent team where I think you put them in any group, they will most likely get out at least first or second place. They will make top 8 over and over again. And I think for an organization like Envy, that's great. You want a consistent team that has a high ceiling and a high floor. And I think Envy has a high floor where there's not going to be a lot of events where you look at them and say, they really just embarrassed themselves there.
Yeah.
My number 4 is very similar to, the Envy strategy of very solid, very constructed, maybe not the best fraggers, maybe not most mechanically gifted players, as some people would say on commentary, but I have Gen G. Gen G, for me, is solid as rock. They won the Pulse Invitational by beating Sentinels and Cloud9, and they almost beat Sentinels in this tournament, too. I think out of all the teams in NA, they are the best suited to play against these aggressive teams. They're very, very structured, and even though I know a lot of players say, we don't have that many set plans, sometimes we just play for fun. You can see it from player 1 and Gamon that they have really good setups, and I've been really enjoying watching them play where very similar to Envy, where I think anytime Gen G's in a tournament, if they win, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I think they're a team that's talented enough and has shown the flexibility that I did not see before, where before they were very kind of rigid in their play, where now you have Gamal and Phoenix. You have Win playing the Jet, playing a much more aggressive style if needed.
Yeah.
But this tournament, again, Sentinels beat them finally. They kind of got over that hump of Gen G that's kind of held them back before. But I really like Gen G. I think Gen G is – you cannot be world class without being – I think they're like the tip of world class, where they're the gatekeepers of the world class tier, where they're that fine like 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 team for me.
Well, from what I hear from Wardell, they invented the classic Haven B execute, where you just get that spike down, throw a wall up, and disperse, run for the hills, and try to get to safety in a good sight line. But no, I'd have to agree with you. And if you ask anybody from Gen G who they think is really kind of like lead for their team, it's GMD. He's new talent, he's young talent, and what that tells us is that they have a potential to grow, with their coach Blank, really set things up well. And in a recent interview at the Coach's Corner with Arda, they were talking about how not only are they trying out agent compositions that already work, they are also trying to put forward their own innovation, and it may be that innovation that gets them to the top 3 spot. Only time will tell, and that's kind of the name of the game for this team, I feel like. But I'm not going to get into a little bit more because they are my top 10. I'm not going to tell you where, but my number 4 is T1. My number 4 is T1. Now, obviously, coming into this, before PAX, you probably would put T1 in your top 2. So for me, I think it's very significant that T1 is dropping in what I feel are the power rankings, right? The team, it always comes in as I feel like the most hyped, but that luster is starting to wear off, especially with the performance that we saw at the PAX Invitational. We talked a little bit about Homeless really took them apart. I'm definitely sure that Fraud is going to whip them back into shape, but their lack of LAN appearances, or rather online remote appearances, is really starting to hurt their standings. They need to show up more. They need to appear at more tournaments, even tournaments like the Pulse Invitational that might not be an Ignition Series event, but at least show up, face off against TSM, Cloud9, Immortals, Gen G, show us what your record looks like, so we're not guessing every time you show up to a tournament what your performance might be. Because I know they went back after that Homeless match and they were disappointed. They were definitely upset about the performance, and I would be if I was T1.
Yeah, really, for T1, the thing is, for all these other teams, we have, 3 tournaments to look at, 5 tournaments to look at, 7 tournaments to look at. And in case of TSM, they play in almost every single tournament, be it, a small C-tier tournament or a B-tier tournament, and along with the Ignition Series tournaments. Where T1, they played 3 tournaments. They played Twitch Rivals, which was beating up on influencer teams, and TSM with Myth, which was their first win, but they beat up on a team with an influencer on it, so can't really give them full credit for that. Their home tournament, the first Ignition Series tournament, where they made the final in impressive fashion, but then lost to TSM in kind of a wash. They kind of got blown out by TSM in the final. And now they come in with new strategies. They're playing Ska on a new agent, putting AZK on the stage. They're doing some stageless comps. Food is running wild in the group stages, and they come to the they come to the playoffs, and they kind of fail. And you would like to see, there's, the Summer Cup tournament is coming out, I believe, next week, right? And you would love to see T1 in that tournament to, get some reps in, maybe win that tournament to kind of build up that momentum. But they're not playing in it. Their academy team is, who's also very good. Their academy team is quite good, but you want to see more reps from T1. Yeah. I am sure when the next Ignition Series tournament is, which should be very soon in North America, sometime in August, they will be, again, one of those favorites where people look at them, and no one's ever going to overlook T1. And that's kind of the issue, right? Where every time a team goes against T1, they are putting a big red circle on that game, where they're like, if we beat these guys, we're going to make names for ourselves. Which happened with Homeless. If Homeless beat, no offense to Gen G, who I actually have higher ranked than T1, if Homeless beat Gen G, I don't think that there's enough. The fanfare is different, right?
Yeah.
Beating T1, which is such an illustrious org. You have a world champion Counter-Strike player in Skadoodle. You have Brax, the first ever Valorant Pro, the first Radiant player in Food. When you beat these guys, you make a name for yourself. So I think there's a lot of pressure on T1 to perform next tournament, and I hope they can get over that hump.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess it's time for my number 3.
Yes.
Ooh, this was very tough. My number 3 and 2 flipped. I had a very difficult time coming 3-2. My number 3 is, I think the Sentinels are the most exciting team in the world, but the most exciting player in the world to watch right now, the finalists of the PAX Arena Invitational, TENS. C9 is my number 3 team. It was very difficult between them and my number 2 team, but I love Cloud9. I love TENS, and I want to kind of shout out Sideshow, who's an amazing Overwatch League commentator, who's doing a lot of great analytical work, a lot of great analytical videos on Valorant. Please go check out his YouTube channel. He's doing a lot of great stuff over there, and he did a video on how TENS is just how he wreaks havoc every time he has any chance to do so. And if you watch the finals versus Sentinels, at times he was willing his team to victory, where when he was on attack on Jet, he was throwing smokes out aggressively and running through the smoke up into Heaven balcony on A site and just rushing at teams and getting those kills to just save his team. And there was a lot of times where I believe in TENS. I think TENS is one of the top players in the entire world. He might be the best player in the world. There's a very good argument you can say that this guy is the best in the world. Yeah. But I know C9's team has become more consistent, and Shinobi's done better, and Relics has done better, and Mitch has looked really good on the stage, and his battle stage is quite deadly. But I don't know if I truly trust C9 outside of TENS, right, where even when C9 is doing great and they're making finals, it still feels like TENS just has to pull his team across the line a lot of time, where it's like, where in that Sentinel series, there were so many times where TENS kind of had to put every teammate on his back and just go, I'm going to take this round for you guys. I don't care if you guys lose your one-on-one duels. I don't care if we're down to no money economy-wise. I'm going to pop my Jet ult, I'm going to throw smokes out, and I'm going to get us a 5-3 advantage. And he did that over and over again. And they still finished second. And I think the problem with C9 for me is that when TENS is shut down, when a team like Gen G, who is smart and knows how to play and knows how to read and break down TENS' play, and they're like, okay, we know on Haven, he loves playing the Judge. He loves playing the Judge Jetty, as you have coined famously in your cast. But when that final came around, the Judge Jetty wrecked TSM at the Pulse Invitational. Yeah. But in the final of the Pulse Invitational, Gen G laughed at TENS. They crushed him. Every place where he was making plays in previous matches, Gen G knew where he was, and they wrecked him. They threw their utility at him. They shock darted him. They knew where he was. So when teams know how to play against TENS and kind of rein him in, and even reining him in, he's still going to get his kills. He's still going to trade 1v1. Yeah. He's still going to kill you most of the time. But when you can make it a 4v4 and TENS is off the board, C9 is very beatable. And I think Sentinels and Gen G both did that, where TENS got his kills, but when he is out of the picture, they felt very confident taking those one-on-one duels. And in 6 case, he was very confident taking those 1v3 duels, where C9 had so many, outnumbered attempts to clutch out matches and just kind of push the series forward, and they just couldn't do it. So for me, I really like C9. I think there's a lot of potential there. I like their this new aggressive, funky style that they're playing around TENS, but I don't know if I trust them fully as I do some of my other top teams, where TENS is world class as world class can be, but the other 4 members, I still don't know if there's the number 2 on the team where I'm like, I trust you if TENS is off today. It's very difficult for C9.
Yeah, and to kind of add on more insult to injury, I feel like it's really easy to say that TENS is pulling his team forward, but then where do you point the finger and say this is the biggest problem or this player is the biggest problem? Because you don't want to be that guy that calls out a player on Twitter, on stream, on broadcast. You don't want to say it. And looking at some of the bottom performers, sometimes it's Relics, sometimes it's Vice, sometimes it's Shinobi. Mitch now has, over the course of some of the tournaments that Cloud9 has played in, has really, I feel like, solidified him as TENS' right-hand man. But it's the other 3 that I'm really starting to really consider and say, okay, I know Shinobi's IGLing, so it might be difficult to pull in the numbers. Vice playing the Cypher, he plays the anchor role. You really have to ask yourself, well, if he's playing the anchor role, how can we get him a little bit more involved? Yeah. Is there ways that we can pull him off sites? Like, what can we do? But I'd have to agree with you. It does feel like the TENS show at times, and sometimes you see the whole roster in full swing. But to touch on another team that has a very similar problem, my number 3 spot, as you can tell that it is not Cloud9, It is, in fact, TSM.
Ooh.
TSM number 3. Now, the reason why this was a perfect segue, by the way. Thank you for that. There's been some controversy that sprouted out during one of Wardell's VOD review of Haven against the match with Envy in regards to some commentary analysis about Cutler's poor performance during their attack side. I think that they are the sum of their parts. If you remove one player from TSM, I think that team will really start to struggle. They've probably developed some sort of level of communication. Their coach has definitely put them in a way where, like, okay, you need to trust Cutler here, or you need to trust Wardell here. He's going to go in. He's going to do his thing. You know, they've built up a lot of trust within their team. And so I even feel like if you swap, let's say, Cutler for Dapper, I think one of the better Cypher players in North America, I still think that team, while might find short-term success, may not find the long-term success of losing a player that they rely on and that they've already invested in and say, this is a player we're going to stick with for 2 months, a year, 2 years, who knows how long, right? But with all of that being said, as I've fluffed it all up, their loss to Sentinels in the semis should be a warning sign that they need to go back to the hyperbolic time chamber. They need to maybe feel a little less confident. I don't know if confidence was a big thing that they were feeling moving on into the playoffs. You know, beating Envy is a good feat. I would have to say, especially in a 2-0 fashion, you might be feeling the way that T1 felt against Homeless, really confident. T1 moving into that Homeless match. You know, 4-0 the group stage. We're on top of the world. Everything feels great. But there has to be something that has to be said about the Sentinels match. You have to go review it. You have to watch it. Losing Ascent, I get it. Sentinels, that might be their most comfortable map pick, but Bind, you shouldn't be losing a map like Bind, especially against a team like Sentinels, where I feel like on any given day, TSM could be the number 1 team in the world. However, on that day, it just wasn't really in their favor. And so I know that they're going to review. They're going to figure out how Sinatra got away with so much on Bind during that semifinal match. But all I see are improvements forward, but still, they've kind of just dropped a little bit in the standings for me.
It's a perfect transition because my number 2 team is TSM. Obviously, TSM and Cloud9 flipped a lot for me. It was back and forth. TSM, they had the Ignition Series victory. C9, they made 2 back-to-back finals with Pulse Invitational and now the PAX Arena tournament. But when I think about which team I would bet on, if there was a best of 5 today and it was TSM versus Cloud9, who am I betting on? I'm still going to bet with TSM.
Yeah.
But I do agree that Sentinels did exploit kind of TSM's issue. TSM is Louis Vuitton. They are Gucci. They are a high economy. They are a team that thrives on the luxurious items. They are not a team that goes into the dirt, plays for the judges and these low-tier weapons. They love the operator. They like the big money buys. And in the Sentinel series, one of the biggest reasons why they got crushed so badly is that Sentinels kept their economy down the entire series. And it stemmed from them losing 4 straight pistol rounds. Every single pistol round in Sentinels versus TSM, Sentinels won that. So every time could build any sort of economy, it got kind of, scrunched back down there. And when they did get the operator, when they did, scrunch the money up to get Louis Vuitton, Wardell himself, that pretty operator that carried them during the first Ignition Series tournament, they shut it down. And they played beautifully, where they were rushing on the sites. They were playing so aggressively and putting so many bodies and throwing so much utility at the areas of pushing back the operator and forcing onto the site, where it was... I know we talk a lot about where Sentinels is this ultra-aggressive team. They're wacky, and they're going to jump off, balconies and do 360s and take crazy, and they do this stuff. And
they do.
They're wacky, and they'll do the Odin cheese and they'll do all that. But they have some really great execute, and they did well on Bind, where they were forcing Wardell off to very awkward angles and pushing him off the map with the operator, and they were flashing him, and they were making him play and have to retake a site with an operator, which is very difficult. So. And when they got him off the operator, he looked human. And when you keep the economy down and TSM doesn't have the money to buy their Gucci operator and Louis Vuitton operator, they looked very screwed. And when Wardell was on the rifle, he looked mortal. And I think that's the thing is, TenZ, he actually is kind of pulled off being the primary operator of of C9, where he'll play the operator just fine, but we saw Mitch play operator just as much as Tens did, where it doesn't matter if he's on the Judge, it doesn't matter if he's on the Vandal, the Phantom, whatever Tens has in his hands, he's going to make magic happen. Where if TSM, I think they have two big win conditions. A, the operator play with Wardell and Sabrosa, the double op sometimes, most primarily Wardell, getting him his gun, getting him into his places to make his shots, and it's Drone. And it's Drone teaming up with Cutler and Hayes on that Phoenix to get first bloods. In the first Ignition Series tournament, he led every player in first bloods. He was, I believe, every 4 rounds, he was getting the first blood for his team, which is amazing. He led everyone in first bloods. He was setting the tempo every single round. In this tournament, he had half of his first bloods. He looked very, very it was by far his worst performance. And I think a lot of people overlook how important Drone is to the team of getting that first blood, of getting that first pick, and kind of getting TSM going. Where in this tournament, their economy was wrecked versus Sentinels, and also Drone didn't have the same impact as he usually has had on that Phoenix. So with those two together, Sentinels had a perfect plan to kind of take them out. And it was, I still think they're number 2, though. I still think they're number 2. I'm giving them, this is their reprieve, right? Where if the next Ignition Series tournament comes and they play the same style and they get shut down again, they're tumbling down the rankings. Yeah. But right now, they won the first Ignition Series tournament. They won a lot of beta tournaments. I give them a lot of credit. This is the first time they've really been knocked out by a team, like really badly knocked out by a team. So I'm still going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I still believe in them, but they're not my number 1 team this week.
Okay, that dives directly into my number 2, which is the complete opposite. It's Cloud9. Right. Their placement at PAX, I just have to reference a lot of the different placements that they've had recently. I'm kind of using a recency bias, to be quite honest. But I also just want to point out that Cloud9 has looked a lot better than what they did when they were first kind of formed. And I still think that this team has room to improve. I think the number 1 thing that they need to hire is the rest of their team and a coach. Yeah. Because from what I understand is that team is doing their own VOD review. That team is putting their own efforts together. And if they have someone that can just lead that charge for them, I think that team could be a number 1 team easily. If you have somebody that can iron out some of those kinks from the players that don't necessarily put up the biggest performances, I'm talking about, Shinobi, I'm talking about Vice, I'm talking about Relics. All these players have their moments to shine, but what if there's a coach that can really bring out the best out of every player, and then now you have a world caliber team? I still think that team has the ability to be a world caliber team. Considering Mitch's performance during the PAX Invitational, he's really solidified, like I said, as Ten's number 2 man. But his kill per round has went up. His first bloods per round has gone up. Pax Arena has been kind of like his highlight performance. It would have been even better if they beat Sentinels, but unfortunately that obviously isn't going to be the case. But there was times where Mitch was pulling out 3, 4, 5 kills. Like, he was just going crazy and helping Tens, like you said, keep his team afloat. And so I don't think Tens necessarily has to do that job by himself anymore. I think that team is improving. And I also think that Shinobi has shown us what Cloud9 is capable of in terms of their strategy, in terms of their executes. It does feel like at times Tens is just running in, but that might be Shinobi saying, you run in and we're going to execute on this, right? So they're my number 2. I think that they've got a lot of great recency in terms of how they've performed. And we'll see in the next NA Ignition Series and the Summer Cup if that continues to be the case. If they make top 4 consistently in the next 2 tournaments, I think even you might reconsider your own power rankings.
Yeah, I think the most interesting and kind of like fun thing that we've seen between the first Ignition Series tournament and the second is that the 2 finals of both tournaments are drastically different in how they play. The first Ignition Series tournament was owned by the operators. It was operators. For TSM, obviously, the winners, you have Skadoodle and T1. It was just owned by the operators. Everyone's complaining, double op meta, this is so boring, this is so, TSM's never going to lose because they just have the best operator players. And we come into this tournament, and it's all about aggression. It's all about these fast pushes. It's all about, beating the operator, where if we can't beat the operator by, peeking them one-on-one, we're just going to overwhelm them with utility and we're going to throw bodies at it, essentially, which Sentinels, and if, Cloud9, where it's difficult to play against him. He's annoying to play against. It's impossible. If you're an operator player on Heaven and it's Smoke City and you have a jet running at you at, 500 miles per hour, it doesn't matter if you're great on the operator. You're dead. So it's really awesome to see kind of the differences just in between two tournaments where we had such great operator play, the op meta, and then we have such a different two finalist teams for the second one. So the third one, who knows? It might it's the fun thing about Valorant right now, and it might change as we go along, is that almost every single gun I've seen in these tournaments, I don't think there's one gun that doesn't get used. People say, "Oh, the Frenzy sucks." Sinatra loves the Frenzy.
Yeah,
he plays it almost exclusively. The Odin, the Ares, the Judge, and the Bucky, like the shotguns, the LMGs, everything is getting used, and we're having so many different teams are still trying to figure out what's the best way to play, and when they find that best play to play, teams are figuring out how to counter that. So,
yeah,
really, really good, really, really fun. And if we're talking about fun, we have to go to my number one, and I believe probably your number one too, the PAX Arena Invitational Champions, as I dubbed them, the most exciting team in the world. Now a team with a crown finally, Sentinels, the champions of PAX Arena. I don't want to say they're the undisputed best in North America. I honestly do believe on any given day, in my top 10, number 1 can lose to number 10 in the right map, in the right situation, where it's such a fledgling scene. It's the Wild West currently. I do think it's going to take a few roster changes. It's going to take some time and for offline tournaments to come on for us to see the real first dynasty of Valorant in North America especially. But, I'm so happy. I am so happy these guys are number 1. I love watching these guys play. And from their first tournaments, they looked bad. And we talked about this on the ESPN Valorant show, is that Sinatra looked awful, and this is nothing against him. It's just he was overly aggressive in all the right plays. He looked sloppy. Sometimes it looked like he was trolling. It looked like he was trolling his team by how overly aggressive he was. The team didn't look synchronized. They lost to amateur teams in beta tournaments, which was embarrassing when you paid so much money for Shazam and Sinatra and Zombs from Apex, and then just kind of embarrassing results. And then they kind of disappeared for a while. They disappeared. They picked up Dapper, and then came back. And their first tournament where they kind of showed off is like, oh man, these guys are actually really, they're in tune. And Sinatra really hasn't changed his style much, where he still is that over-aggressive player who's very unorthodox, but he's more refined, where he now knows why he's doing what he's doing. Like, everything he seems to do seems to have a purpose now, where before it seemed like he was just doing things to be aggressive just for aggressive sakes. Now it seems like everything that Sentinels does, they have an idea behind, which is very impressive because I don't believe they have a coach. And their executes are really good, and they're the best attacking team in North America for my money. And just everything they do, from the unorthodox cheeses of the Odin to how they are pushing 5 onto a site where they will throw every single bit of utility to break into a site and take the site, and then come at us. We're going to take the site, come at us. We're good here. We got you. And I think the one thing, and I think this is going to be a conversation that's going to be stemmed for a while now, is that Artis brought this up after G2 won the most recent English Series tournament, the We Play Invitational, which you casted. And he said, NA teams are really good, but each team seems to have 1 or 2 players that aren't great. They're washed up. They're not fraggers. Where he said, why doesn't TENS play with, if TENS was on TSM before Dell and Subrosa, they'd be unstoppable. Where I do think Sentinels is a team where from 1 to 5, all 5 of those guys are killers. There's not one player in that lineup where you wouldn't be surprised if they put up a 30 bomb. They are monsters. Sick is the best battle stage in North America. I'm sure David P would have he's in the argument of David P versus Sick, who is the best, entry sage, the battle sage in the world. But every single player on this team can frag out. Dapper is incredible. And the thing of if Sentinels is that it doesn't matter it's 1v5, 1v4, 1v3. I never feel like they're out of it. It always feels like they have the talent and the ability to outduel their opponents in one-on-one situations. And Sick did it over and over again in the final. So I have them as number 1. Is Sentinels your number 1?
I'm just gonna roll the clip. Just roll the clip. Sentinels, of course, they are also my number 1, and I'm just gonna echo everything that you said. I mean, if it's not Sinatra, it's Dapper. If it's not, it's Zombs. If it's not, it's Shazam. If it's not, it's Sick. Every single person on this, on every single player on this team, from the Battle Sage to the Phoenix entry to the Combat Cypher, this team has just so much firepower that they have to work with. Whatever player is left in a 1v many situation, you can count on them to really deliver. Whereas in other teams, definitely not going to name any names, you might find yourself in a scenario where not every player can handle the pressure of a 1v many scenario. I'm consistently, though, the most impressed with Sinatra out of all the players on this roster. And that is why I'm super excited about the FaZe Clan roster once it all gets fully fleshed out and revealed. It is just so cool to see a player that is outside of the CS atmosphere inject himself into a game that is, some would argue a CS copy or whatever, or like a very close representation of CS. And a lot of CS players have obviously flocked to Valorant. But Sinatra comes in, he says, "Hi, I'm an Overwatch player. I beat that game. Now I'm going to come and I'm going to beat this game too," right? Not to mention, Sinatra's agent pool is deep. It is very, very deep. He can play the Phoenix, the Sova, the Raze. Now, mind you, his Raze, very sloppy. Needs a lot of work on the Raze. There's a couple of NA Raze that were in the chat when there's this one moment where he threw a paint shell. It actually bounced off and hit him in the head.
Yeah, I remember that.
I get it. Sinatra, but he's trying to show us that he is a powerful player and he should not be messed with. And if it's not the Sentinels, whatever roster he ends up on in a year from now, 2 years from now, he's going to kill it. He's going to destroy the enemy team. So I only think that for them, they can only go up. They need a coach. They obviously need a coach. And I think every team needs a coach because that'll only make their skill ceiling even higher, right? So
let's run down quickly both our top 10s. Obviously, you have my top 5. Sentinels, TSM, Cloud9, Gen.G, and T1. But let's release my bottom half of my top 10. Number 6, I have Immortals. Number 7, I have Homeless. The story of the PAX Arena Invitational Tournament. 8, Envy. Envy and Homeless flipped along. It was very back and forth between those teams. Obviously, Together we are true. I know you have number 5. My Envy boys. Is that the Homeless that grabbed me? They got me. But yes, number 7, Homeless. Number 8, Envy. Number 9, Code 7, aka Built by Gamers. Very happy those guys also got picked up by a big org. Good for them. They deserved it. And number 10, 100 Thieves, which is, we could have a whole entire another hour podcast about 100 Thieves. What should they do? Should they change anything? Are people overreacting? Is Hiko the unluckiest NA FPS player of all time, as Valorant would say? Like, the Valorant subreddit would say? Like, we can just dive into an hour about 100 Thieves. But for now, number 10, 100 Thieves. I feel like my top 10 is pretty secure. There's a few other teams like Renegades and Complexity that are up there, and it's very deep right now. And the fun thing about NA is it's very deep. We have new awards coming in every single week. It's a very exciting time for North American Valorant, but this is my top 10. What's yours, Simo?
Okay, so, we'll go through the 1 to 5 just to refresh our minds. It's the Sentinels at number 1, Cloud9 at number 2, TSM at number 3, T1 at number 4, Envy at number 5, and here's where things get crazy. Gen.G at number 6. I feel like you probably could have predicted that. Immortals at number 7. Homeless at number 8. Built by Gamers at number 9. And Complexity at number 10.
Over 100 Thieves.
Okay, so here we go.
We don't like that.
I actually have a podcast later about talking about the 100 Thieves problem. To be quite honest, I have wrestled with putting them at number 9, at number 8, at number 10, in and out. But like Complexity, it's a new team. And I think despite not really making it through what I consider to be one of the harder groups, they actually had a decent showing against the Sentinels. Map 1 was close. Map 2, maybe not so much. But it shows promise. It shows that this team can really perform. And you look at a player like Ohai, who is coming in, giving his own personal Wardell impersonation. He's doing good. He actually, funny enough, had one of the highest first bloods per round alongside 10s. It's hard to top 10s, but he was pretty darn close. And what that means for me is that Complexity have the opportunity to kind of turn things around and build out a good team. If they get a coach, they get things rolling. I believe in them. Built by Gamers, I think that they just kind of hover in the bottom half of the top 10 consistently. They've got good performances, but it's never good enough to make it kind of to the playoff stage. And even if they get to the playoff stage, they don't really make it quite far. Homeless, I need more from them. I need more tournaments from them. They can really skyrocket in the rankings, but I need more from them because they really got taken apart in their semifinal match. It was the quarterfinals that was great, but then they just kind of fell apart. Immortals, you might be wondering, why is that in there? I think they played around with different players on their roster. They put Thief in. It didn't really work out. Now that JC Stanny is back, and he's IGLing, I want to see what this team can do. Now that I feel like they've ironed out all the problems that they had, I wonder where they can really take that. And then Genji is Genji. I don't really think I don't like they
are
yeah.
solid as a rock. They will always be there. They're the perennial finalists. They are consistent as consistent can be. They won't falter out tournaments, but you would not be surprised if they don't make the final.
Yeah.
I think top 10. I still believe in 100 Thieves. 100 Thieves had the most difficult group. Hiko had internet troubles. They lost 1-2 to Homeless. They lost 1-2 to TSM. They lost 1-2 to Built by Gamers. They lost very close games to all those top teams who I have them above in the ranking. So I can see why 100 Thieves did not look that great, and maybe a few changes could be needed, but I still believe that I still need to see them in one or two more tournaments before I'm going to overreact and go full Reddit where it's like, Hiko needs better teammates, he's being held back. I think that guys like Venerated and your boy Dre, when getting more reps, getting more tournaments in, I think it's very similar to the Sentinels where I think as more tournaments go along and more reps they get, they're going to look better. So 100 Thieves, I still got your back, even though Simo doesn't.
Okay, I just want to preface, because I know that the stakes are out. The witch hunters are in full effect. Twitch chat is starting to tear me off piece by piece, limb by limb. I just want to say that these are, of course, power rankings, the point of the show. But I just want to mention that I feel like even a team not in the top 10 could take out Sentinels on any given day. We talked about this. Even Cloud9, even TSM. We're talking about the 100 Thieves, the mix-ups, the potential other teams that we may not know about currently. If Charlotte Phoenix gets their stuff together and they start to come forward. We haven't even mentioned Way Too French, who really had some close matches against Team Envy. There's a lot of, even the Renegades, their new team too. There's a lot of opportunity to make it to the top 10. And I'm not going to lie to you. You put your own 6 to 10 together and you'll find out how difficult it actually really becomes, because there's so many close teams that are kind of neck and neck together.
Very quickly, as we had the Killjoy news, we're kind of running a little bit late on the show, but I want to close out the show as we do usually every week with the player of the week. I'm going to give my player of the week, Simo. You can give your own take to say, disagree, pick your own player, maybe someone from Homeless, whoever you want to pick. But for me, my player of the week coming out of North America's region is Sick. Sentinels Battle Sage, the residential entry. I think the most surprising stat people do not realize about Sick is that Sinatra, right? Sinatra, he's the most aggressive entry player in North America, the best entry player in North America. He only had 4 more First Bloods than Sick did throughout the PAX Invitational. Only 4 more First Bloods as the residential Phoenix player, as that aggressive entry than the Sage. It just kind of shows you how bloodthirsty and how really good at aiming Sick is. He is one of the best pistol round players in the world. Just if you watch him on pistol round, his aim is pinpoint. The man is a monster. Just all around, great performance by him. And I think the finals performance really solidified his place for me for player of the week. So many times in that series, Cloud9 were up 3-1, 4-1. They felt like they had the match won. Even in the final round of the tournament where Sentinels won, it was a 3v1 situation where Sick had to move from A site over to B site on split, plant the bomb. He kills Tens to make it a 3-1 to 2v1. And then for whatever reason, Cloud9 went in weirdly, and it was a very awkward moment where it should have been a secured win for them. But even then, Sick, cool as ice, does not matter who he's playing against in an outnumbered situation. He comes up in the clutch. He is my player of the week. Very, very great player. How about you, Simo? Is Sick your player, or are you going to pick someone else?
To be honest, I always kind of have to lean towards the underdog, the new player that has entered the story. And I've been casting Superman a lot. I think that he this was kind of like his breakout performance, right? If he's not stuck with this roster, a roster will find him and put him together with a great team. And if you take a look, for example, Sentinels, we talked a lot about how they are a team, including Sick. They all are kind of like individual killers. Like they could really fit into a team and just perform for the team. I think Superman is that type of player. I think he's a Sentinels quality level player. Is he on Sentinels? Of course not. But do I think that he has the potential to fit within that roster and perform well? I don't know who I will take out, but I just see Superman as that level of player. He really had a great showing at PAX. The question becomes, of course, for him, he has a lot of pressure. He performed very well. What does the future look like for Homeless? And for me personally, what does the future look like for Superman? To be quite honest, there are a lot of great players that had great showings during the PAX Invitational. You know, you pointed out Sick, but Sinatra had some great games too. It was Shazam and Dapper. The whole team really came together in a variety of different ways. But for me, giving it to the underdog, Superman, trying to make a name for himself, coming from Crossfire of all games. And I just think he showed up. He really showed up. I just want to see if he shows up again.
Not a bad choice at all. Superman also someone who was high on my list. If they had gone past C9, probably would have been a player of the week even if they lost the finals. But that semifinal loss felt like C9 had figured out Homeless a bit, as you were talking about the lurking, the kind of the five head plays that Homeless pulled out versus T1 weren't working as well the day after. So I like Superman. I like Homeless. I like all of these North American teams. And if you want more, discussion, and I'm sure we'll have Simo on in the future, the Thursday show, ESPN's weekly Valorant podcast show, every Thursday night, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Actually, no, that is this show. Let's move it back an hour. It's 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, 2 a.m. over in the European regions. Simo, I just want to thank you so much for coming on and battling me in this combative power rankings. We both agreed on Sentinels. We had a few disagreements. You hating 100 Thieves, we know. You don't like it's okay. It's okay. I still have Hiko's back. I still believe in Hiko and venerating those boys out in 100 Thieves. It's okay if you don't.
Thanks for having me. It's always been a pleasure here to be on the ESPN Esports. It's kind of like similar to Superman. He had his own breakout performance. I had my own breakout performance here at ESPN Esports. So it's always a blast coming on the show. And I think our 1 to 5 was way more close and way more kind of like contested than the 6 to 10. So it's always a pleasure.
Where can people check you out?
I'm Simo was taken everywhere because unfortunately my username Simo was taken on every single platform. So I just did the lazy thing and made that my brand. But that's where you can check me out. Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, wherever you want.
Thank you, Simo. And to chat, as always, it does not matter if you're ranked 20th in the world, 15th in the world, or 2nd. In my heart, you are always number 1, and we will see you here next week.